What is up, my Squirtleites? It is I, your king, welcoming you to my takeaway and impressions video for the Nintendo Direct for E3. I had a feeling I was going to need to do a separate video for this Direct alone because I had a feeling Nintendo was going to bring it harder than any of the other conferences, and boy was I right. In fact, at the very end of this video, probably going to rank all my conferences, and I think it's a pretty safe bet that Nintendo is at the very darn top. They did awesome. Now, I wasn't interested in everything they had to show, and I'm not going to cover the things I had no interest in because that would be a waste of my time and your time trying to discuss things that I don't have a vested interest in. So if you want to hear about those things, you can go read up on them, you can go watch the Direct yourself, or you can get impressions from more qualified people. I would rather talk about the games that actually, again, I have an interest in. First of those was the very first game they showed in the Direct, which was Luigi's Mansion 3, which I think should actually be called Luigi's Hotel 3. Because this one actually takes place in a hotel, and it looks phenomenal. It looks amazing. I actually wasn't the biggest fan of the first Luigi's Mansion. First of all, actually, I think it's an okay game. I'm not like way into it like certain people are. Dark Moon didn't really get me either, but seeing this game and the way it works, I'm a lot more excited for this Luigi's Mansion than I ever have been before. That's not to say I don't like the original Luigi's Mansion. I think it's a fine game. What I really don't much care for is the scoring, the scoring system in that game, and how much of an emphasis the game places on getting perfect ranks and all that stuff across the board. Like I didn't really care for that system a whole lot, but the actual gameplay itself I love. I really do think it's good. So Luigi's Mansion 3, seeing more of that, and the fact that there's couch co-op and even an online mode is awesome. There's also a secondary Luigi who is known as Gooigi. Like, it's literally just Luigi as this green gooish monster who can do certain tasks that Luigi can't do, such as, like, walk through grates and gates and spikes and stuff like that, but also can't interact with water safely. So, some pretty interesting mechanics added into this version of Luigi's Mansion. I'm very excited to see that. I should mention I'm not going in the exact order of the Direct, simply because I'm doing most of these impressions based off of a recap article that I'm using right now to kind of remember everything that was in the stream because I watched it hours ago at the time of recording. But yeah, so forgive me, I'm not going to go in exactly the perfect order that you might want to hear. They unveiled some new Smash Bros characters, which I care about Smash Bros. Can't say I care about Dragon Quest all that much though, so I don't really have anything to say on those characters other than that I believe you can switch between the 4 of them in battle, which that's pretty cool. I mean, I'll still use them. I still like using every fighter in the game, but like, I can't, like, fanboy over it because I've never really played any Dragon Quest games in the past, so can't talk about that too much. We'll talk about the other hero later on that was introduced because that was more towards the end of the stream. But another big one was Legend of Zelda Link's Awakening. Now, me, being the graphics baby that I am, didn't really get to play Link's Awakening when it first came out, and as a result, once I found out about that game years later, I had absolutely no desire to go back and play it. So now that it's coming out on the Switch, I am incredibly excited to play this game finally. So can't wait for Link's Awakening. There's also this new dungeon, or build your own dungeon mechanic that is being introduced in the game that is really cool. It's hosted by Dompe. And you're supposed to unlock certain like tiles sets that you can add, like that you can include in each room in your dungeon throughout the game by playing the game and doing certain activities, which is really cool. That harkens back to, like, for me personally, that reminds me of like Phantom Hourglass, where as you played through the game, you would continuously unlock ship parts, and you could do it by doing all sorts of various activities, whether it was just playing the game normally, whether it was doing the multiplayer that was in that game, whether it was doing little side quests and all that kind of stuff. You could unlock different ship parts and you could get different bonuses for your ship. Now they're doing it with, I think, a much more engaging and much more interesting mechanic in, again, building your own dungeons. Now, I didn't see anything about like sharing these dungeons with like your friends and stuff like that, which I think would have been a really cool idea if they implemented that. But from what I can tell, that's not really a thing. If they were to somehow implement that at a later time, that would be awesome. But as it stands right now, it's still kind of you create your own dungeon, you then play through it, and then you'll win rewards and stuff like that. And I think that's pretty cool. So yeah, definitely excited for Link's Awakening, which does come out soon, September 20th of this year. Before I get on to what I think was the coolest announcement of the entire stream, I want to talk about Pokemon Sword and Shield for a bit. And there's not really anything that was shown during the stream that I have anything to talk about, but there's one specific aspect that was discussed in the Treehouse, the Nintendo Live Treehouse that came afterwards that needs some serious discussion. And I just wanted to bring it up real quick. So with Pokemon Sword and Shield, they briefly mentioned that they were going to be adding Pokemon Home, which is going to allow you to transfer your Pokemon from previous games into Pokemon Sword and Shield. This is now the new Pokemon Bank. And it's supposed to be kind of this, conglomerate service where you can just access everything. Except for the problem is, the biggest problem with Pokemon Sword and Shield, or at least with this version of Pokemon Home, is that you cannot transfer any Pokemon that are not as a part of the Galar Dex into Pokemon Sword and Shield. And you might be thinking, well, that's reasonable. And I agree. Hearing that normally, it's reasonable. They don't want you to, first of all, get too much of an advantage when you start. They want you to unlock the National Dex over time. Except that's where the problem lies, is that you can't do that. You cannot unlock the living Dex later on. You can't catch them all, essentially, in Pokemon Sword and Shield at all. Which blows my mind that this is actually a decision that Game Freak has made, that basically if it's not in the Galar Dex, you are SOL. You cannot get your Pokemon in the game at all. You do not have access to that. So you better hope that some of your favorite Pokemon are in the Galar Dex, or you're screwed this generation. Like, absolutely screwed. I think that's the most boneheaded decision ever, simply for the sheer fact that the whole reason that Pokemon as an RPG has survived this long above all other monster battling RPGs is down to the Pokemon. And restricting access for any people that have any favorites in the series is just, I think it's one of the stupidest decisions that they could make. Like, this was the single biggest negative I can take out of everything Nintendo did today, was this decision to lock out a sizable chunk of all of the Pokemon from the Galar Dex, and therefore from the entirety of Generation 8, at least this year, which I just can't believe it. They even implied that they're doing this for the sake of competitive balancing, which further implies that they aren't going to then add this in a later update, nor will you be able to unlock the living Dex in the end game. Like I said, you're completely restricted to whatever is in the Galar Dex for this generation, which by most people's estimates is probably going to be a third of all of the Pokemon that have come through all the generations. I would say at the most generous, it'll probably be half of them, which again, to me, that's just, it blows my mind that this was even a decision that was made, and that anyone at Game Freak thought that this was going to go over well. There are many reasons as to why this decision could have been made, whether it's they don't want to, have to remake all of the models for the Switch version, whether, it's like a time constraint issue, whether it really is this competitive issue, although I don't really buy that bull, because that's not a very good way of fixing your competitive. If you just have to cut your your number of characters down in half, that just shows you're probably actually worse at balancing than you thought you were, or than you want to admit. But whatever the reason is, I think well, first of all, it already has drawn a lot of ire and backlash, and it'll be interesting to see how that develops over the following weeks and months. But in the meantime, I think this is a very stupid decision, and I have rescinded my Pokemon Sword and Shield pre-order at least until I see that there are enough of my favorite Pokemon in the Galar Dex to get excited about, to then hop back in and play the game. But that was the only negative takeaway I have. I'm done with that. I promise. Nothing else negative to talk about in this stream. Next, we have Animal Crossing. Let's talk about that. Yes, they announced Animal Crossing. This is my personal biggest or most exciting thing that they talked about in this event, Animal Crossing New Horizon. It's for the Switch. Now, they didn't initially announce this was coming out in 2019. Now it's coming out in March of 2020, which I think is reasonable. I think that's fine. Delays are a good thing, developers, as long as you're using them to polish up a game. And you're not just, you don't have to lie through your teeth. You just fully come out to us and say, hey, we need to develop this game to work on it more. Guess what? That's fine. Do it. Go ahead. Anyone who's mad at you is a dick. And honestly, we are okay with that. And I really want this to be an excellent game, because I have been incredibly excited to play another Animal Crossing game. New Leaf was probably my least favorite in the series, but I have still gotten a sizable amount of playtime in every single Animal Crossing since the GameCube. And I guess I should say excluding the mobile game that they had like last year or 2 years ago. But aside from that, I've had a lot of experience with all of the with all the Animal Crossing games. I absolutely adore the series, and I'm very excited to now play on New Horizon, which from the looks of it is supposed to mostly be based on your own like island. Like you're supposed to have your own little island city, and there's a lot more there's actually like crafting mechanics added into this Animal Crossing, which I think is fine. I think it's a type of game that can definitely warrant it. Based on the UI, I could tell that they actually have item stacking this time, which mostly remedies any problems I would have with a crafting system being added into Animal Crossing New Horizon. So incredibly excited for that game. Cannot wait to play it. It is definitely, as of right now, next to Ori and the Will of the Wisps, my most anticipated game for 2020. As far as other announcements and first party, I'll talk about the surprise one last, as well as the other Smash Brothers character last. But as far as third-party games go, they talked about how Resident Evil 5 and 6 are coming to the Switch, which, like, those games, it's like, whatever, okay. I mean, they already announced all the other Resident Evils are coming to Switch, so I guess it's not that big of a deal, because it's not like they're taking priority over the better Resident Evils, but they got announced, so that's something. Witcher 3 is coming to Switch, as I will affectionately refer to it as Switcher, which is just insane to me. Now, granted, with this game, and I would like to emphasize this is kind of an issue I have with a lot of Switch games, is Witcher 3 is going to be $60 at launch, which reminder, this is now a 4-year-old game that is currently like $20 for the complete edition on PS4 and Xbox One and PC, and they're asking for you to pay $60 for what is assuredly going to be an inferior downgraded version. Like, I'm not going to go right out and say that it's going to run poorly, but it's definitely going to be at lower specs, at a lower resolution, and it's not going to be as high fidelity, as strong a version as its console counterparts, let alone the PC version. So, yeah, that's a little bit of a hard pill to swallow. Hopefully that does go down in price. To its credit, and to most games' credit, as bad as Switch prices are, typically third-party games are a lot more lenient when it comes to sales and price discounts, so potentially we will see Witcher 3 get discounted pretty soon after its launch, considering that price tag is going to be a little bit rough for people, but at the same time, Witcher 3 portable, it's kind of cool. It's kind of cool. Another big third-party game that I cared a lot about to see was a remake of Panzer Dragoon. I've actually never gotten to play the Panzer Dragoon games, but they are totally right up my alley. I absolutely love rail shooters. Little known fact, I adore them. I mean, a lot of that is definitely traced back to my love of Star Fox 64. I really do like rail shooters, and Panzer Dragoon is oft considered one of the best, if not the best of all time in that genre. And so, very excited to finally get around to playing that game. It's coming out around the holiday season, possibly a little later. They said winter, so it could be December, January, February, any of those times. But it's supposed to be coming out, within the next year. So, pretty darn cool. All other third-party games I didn't really have a whole lot to say about. I kind of checked out for like a 10-15 minute period during the Direct because a lot of the things that they talked about just really weren't my thing. But that's not to say they didn't still hold a lot of weight and clout, like the Mana series and also the Dragon Quest XI stuff and a Contra game and this Dark Crystal, Netflix Dark Crystal thing and No More Heroes 3 and all this other stuff that I'm sure plenty of other people are excited about. I just don't have the same feelings for. They also did a bit of a sizzle reel that showed off some games that are getting ported to Switch. They showed Ni no Kuni, which is awesome. That's definitely the way I'm going to be playing that game. And that comes out on September 20th. Alien Isolation, which I don't know if that's going to have the same punch on the Switch as it would on something like the PS4, Xbox One, just simply down to the way that game frames its atmosphere. I mean, it could, but Alien Isolation is just one of those few games where it feels like more of a, I need to wire myself in and enjoy the horror experience in like full HD resolution with the sound effects and stuff like that to get the most out of it. And I don't feel like the Switch is going to be able to perfectly deliver on that, but that aside, it's still a really good game. Surprisingly good game. So if you are a horror fan, would recommend. They also have a new Super Lucky's Tale, which is very interesting to me, and I'll go over why in a second, or after I talk about the sizzle reel, because it leads into something else. But Super Lucky's Tale was an Xbox One exclusive, also Windows 10, of course, as all Xbox One exclusives are, and it is getting a new branded and I believe slightly updated version for the Switch, which is coming out in fall 2019. Honestly, this is the kind of game that is like perfect for the Switch. It's a a very kid-friendly 3D platformer that's not too challenging. Very, very pleasant to play. Just fine, just all right. And I think people are going to enjoy it on the Switch. Honestly, I remember watching the unveiling of that game initially and thinking immediately, wow, this would be perfect on a Nintendo system, yet it's starting its life on an Xbox console for some reason. And then the Spyro the Dragon trilogy was in the sizzle reel, which is, that's coming out September 3rd. I know a lot of people were very anxious to see if it was going to be on Switch. I know there's a lot of complaints about how, are all 3 games in the cart, or is it just the one game and you download the other 2? Which, I get why people, get mad about it, because people want their games to be wholly and completely physical. I'm still going to be getting this either way. As I've said many times in the past couple months, Spyro the Dragon, the Reignited trilogy, has been one of my favorite, just out of nowhere, revelations that I've never got to experience before now, and I'm absolutely in love with that trilogy as a whole, and have so much so that I am absolutely willing to drop another $40 or $30 or whatever the cost is to play it all over again on the Switch, because they're just freaking delightful games. Absolutely adore them. They also had Mario and Sonic at the Tokyo Olympics. They had Dead by Daylight, Dauntless, a game called The Sinking City. They had a couple of other ones, I think, sprinkled in there. That was cool. But back to New Super Lucky's Tale, just talking about that for a second. So there were some rumors a few months back. I think it's been a little while, but some rumors that the Xbox Game Pass was going to be actually coming to Switch, and it was going to be solely stream-based. It wasn't going to include the download service that Xbox One and PC, and, now PC currently enjoy. It was just going to be streaming only. And I was fully expecting for us to hear a lot more of information on that if in either the Xbox stream or the Nintendo stream, and we heard nothing about it, which, seeing Super Lucky's Tale there, which was, again, touted as an Xbox One exclusive, and was actually one of the launch titles alongside the Xbox One X, and it was so directly tied to Xbox One, seeing that in the stream, but nothing in regards to Game Pass, really kind of surprised me. I'm a little bit shocked about that, honestly, because I felt like that was going to be a bigger deal than it was, but no word from it. So last 2 things that the Nintendo Switch stream talked about. First things first, the other Ultimate DLC character, Smash Ultimate DLC character that was announced, was a great fake out, but the second I saw the DK characters, I immediately started to go, oh my gosh, they're actually going to do it. They're actually going to do it. And then as soon as I saw those wings pop up, even though it was initially a Duck Hunt fake out, I was like, they did it. They freaking brought Banjo Kazooie onto the Switch. And there's no other reason they would have saved this for very last of the stream, because everyone wanted that. That was a highly, highly, highly requested character as far back as Smash 4, actually. I remember Banjo. I think Banjo was the highest voted character to add into Smash 4, but didn't make the cut. And now with Ultimate has finally made the cut, and it's awesome. I am super stoked to see Banjo Kazooie in Smash. I mean, still to this day, one of my all-time favorite Nintendo IPs was Banjo Kazooie, and even more specifically, Banjo Tooie. So, and then there was even some good references to both of those games in the trailer, and it was just all sorts of fun. Absolutely loved it. So excited to see that. They're just great characters, and they have great potential with their moves, so I can't wait to totally main them. They are going to be my mains for sure. But the very last thing that was talked about in the stream was a teaser trailer for a game that is in development, but is not that far along, at least we can presume. It's probably not going to be a 2020 game. It might not even be 2021. But it is a sequel to The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild, which is just crazy to me because Zelda games don't typically get direct sequels ever. You can kind of make that argument with Phantom Hourglass to Wind Waker and Twilight Princess to Ocarina of Time, but those are definitely not explicit direct sequels. This is an explicit direct sequel to Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild, set in the same universe, using very much the same assets as was shown with the characters. And the teaser trailer was really cool. It kind of gave the impression that Breath of the Wild 2 might be going back to a little bit more of a story-focused type of game than the first one was, because let's be frank, story was definitely the least emphasized aspect of the original Breath of the Wild. It definitely cared a lot more about being a sandbox. And I should mention, I was not keen on Breath of the Wild the first time I played it on the Wii U. getting around to playing it again on the Switch, I have definitely grown to appreciate the game, at least more than I did. I don't think I still herald it as like the the second coming of Christ like certain other people do, but I do think that it is a very good game. And in fact, at some point on this channel, I may potentially cover it. We will see. I think I would like to be a little bit more confident in the game before I do that. But I do like the game. I do like Breath of the Wild quite a lot. So, but I will say I definitely do, after playing it for a while, lament the fact that a lot of the linearity was stripped away from it. Because while Breath of the Wild is an incredibly enjoyable and fun to play sandbox game, as a pure Zelda experience, I don't think it's all that hot. I think I still think it's one on the lower end of Zelda, pure Zelda experiences. So if we can get like that, the same universe and, that same emphasis and that same universe and that same aesthetic on a more Zelda, like traditional Zelda-like game, I mean, with still a lot of the elements that made Breath of the Wild great, kept intact, but they can, again, focus more on the story, I would be stoked. I would be absolutely stoked if they can somehow balance that out a little more. They also kind of, I mean, I don't want to jump to conclusions, but there's a lot of speculation that maybe seeing Zelda and just Link traveling alongside together, that maybe potentially Zelda could be a playable character, and or there might be a co-op element to the game. Again, like I said, don't want to jump to conclusions, but all I want is playable Zelda, guys. That's all I want, Nintendo. I'm honestly sick of playing Link. I want to play a Zelda. Please. Ugh. Okay, so that's really everything I have to say about the stream. So let me quickly rank all of the conferences in order to best to worst, in my opinion, excluding the Devolver Digital Conference. Like, I actually just remembered that was a thing and kind of repressed it. I mean, it was interesting. That's for sure. But in order of, I think, best conference to worst conference, I would have to say Nintendo, then Microsoft, then Square Enix, then the PC Gamer Show, then Bethesda, then Ubisoft, then EA. I would say that would have to be the order. And granted, those last three, Bethesda, Ubisoft, and EA, are like in a league of their own, way below all the other conferences. Like, Bethesda's was really, really bad, but had 3 good parts. Ubisoft's was really, 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 really bad, but had one interesting part and a half. EA was really, 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 really bad, but had one part that was semi-intriguing. Like, they were all really bad conferences. Even Square Enix's was kind of bad, but at least it had a lot of, like, it showcased a lot of good things to make up for how bad the conference itself was. Like, a lot of what they showed was good. The way they presented it really, really sucked. So all in all, this has definitely been one of the weaker E3s, but leave it to Nintendo to at least stay more or less consistent. I mean, they've really only had 1 or 2 years. Okay, I guess I shouldn't say that Nintendo is the most consistent ever, because most of their E3s during the Wii U life cycle was actually kind of trash, but, and actually even during the Wii life cycle, but at least leave it up to Nintendo to add some personality to this entire E3. They at least, they continue to be Nintendo, both for better and for worse, and I would only say for worse with that stupid Pokemon decision. But that single iota of problem, which is a big problem, but it's just one problem, that aside, Nintendo killed it. They did really, really good. Microsoft was fine. They kind of gave everyone what they, for the most part, expected. Not a whole lot new, but still maintained their consistency that they've displayed for the last few years, and everyone else just kind of shit the bed. So that is basically it for everything. I mean, obviously there's still the convention itself that goes on for the next few days. There might be some interesting announcements that go on during that. I know today, while I'm recording this, in fact, there are a few other studios that didn't actually show up in conferences that are having interviews with people like Jeff Keighley and, other announcements that might be going on with different games that people might care about, mostly ongoing stuff. Not as many new titles, but hey, something else might crop up, you never know. But that is going to be it for me and my impressions on E3. I hope you guys have enjoyed it more than I did. I mean, like I said, I enjoyed aspects of it quite a bit, and some more than others, but at the same time, I really hope that you guys got the most out of it and you got the things that you wanted out of E3 this year. And that's it. Thank you all so very much for watching, and I will see you all in the next one.